All right, back on another podcast. I hope everyone had a happy and safe weekend. I got the Cuz on the line, and today's going to be all over the place because the sports weekend was all over the place. I thought we were going to lead in with the Woj news, but we'll get to that in a couple of minutes here. Let's start off, John, with talking about the Washington Redskins. They've announced today that they will no longer be called the Washington Redskins, that name is officially, I'm using their words, quote, retired, unquote. And there's no new news about what the name is actually going to be. We're recording this at noon on the Monday that they announced this news. And Austin and I did our opinions last week and what we thought the name should be changed to. We both agreed with the Red Tails because of the association with the military and the grouping of Air Force pilots, the black Air Force pilots in
the Tuskegee Airmen.
Yes, the Tuskegee Airmen. So that they were a nickname for them were the Red Tails, so they could don that name, stay with the colors, not really change the logo all that much, and the initial logos for the Red Tails are awesome. I love them. So
Yeah, I was gonna say.
what
I
is
think
what's your go-to if you were in charge of changing the name in Washington? What would you change it to?
Well, first of all, let me just start by saying it's kind of about time. It's like it's always just seemed kind of like odd and like there's probably that's not to say there aren't other egregious like like there aren't other insensitive names in sports, and that could be a whole thing for like another day. We could like talk about that and we could just delve into that. But for argument's purpose right now, in my opinion, I've always thought Redskins was like up at the top of being one of the most like more egregious in terms of being like just insensitive in general. So I'm glad to see it gone. Um, but at the same time, it's kind of like you're kind of in a weird position, I guess. Like, what do you name it? Do you kind of stick in that red kind of thing? And I mean, like, and I think that could work. Red tails. I think we might have been looking at the same article, I guess, where they had like the different possible names you could like run with. I like that. I like the red tails. I saw it was like a little plain logo, maybe I think or
Yeah.
something. I think yeah. I think we all. I think we like we've been everybody's been looking at the same like one article. And it's just like, do you go with that, or do you lean into like the more patriotic stuff, like in terms of the Caps and the Nats and the Wizards and all that stuff? You know, it's interesting to see where they go. I think you could go one of two ways. I think if you're gonna keep in that, maroon gold, you're gonna try to keep the same color scheme, and you're gonna try and just change the, you want to keep that kind of feel to the team. I think Red Tails is a good fit. I think there were some other ones that I can't really remember off the top of my head, but I could also see them leaning heavily, like just going a complete 180 and leaning heavy into into like the more national kind of like color, like the more like American patriotic colors and stuff, and doing something with that, or just something with the military would be interesting too. I think there was something where it's like the Washington Generals, I think, or bring back the Senators, like they could become the Washington Senators. I don't know. Like there's a lot of different ways they can go with it. So, I mean, if what would I choose? I think Red Tails is a good option, but I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of ones you could like weigh out, and like to be honest, I'm glad I don't have to be the one to choose. Um,
I
but
don't think you're in a bad position changing the
no,
name.
I don't think so. I think there's better. I mean, like I said, I think there's just better options now to begin with, and now you have like I guess like a good problem from the team of football in Washington. I'm not going to use the term anymore because it's defunct. It's over. Right, that era of that football team is no longer. Well, we'll call it. We don't know yet. And until then, I'm just going to refer to the football team in Washington, I guess, in D.C. Uh, but like they have like a good problem now. They turn like hopefully they could take a bad, like as we quote on the Michael, like we quote from the K show all the time, bad optics, right? You take a bad optic and you turn it into hopefully now you have a good problem. or what do we do? What do we name the team now? We have so many better options, like Red Tails, like I don't know, Generals. That one I
I've
saw
heard
was like,
Warriors too.
yeah,
I I've heard, and this is just off of articles in the Washington Post, that Warriors is um, high up there on the list for
yeah,
the people in the Washington organization
yeah. I mean,
to change
I,
the name. I like Arlington's as well. That was my until I saw the stuff for the Red Tails, because
yeah,
when I was recording the podcast, I didn't see any of that, and then um, Austin
showed you the
told me
article.
about it, and I looked it up, and that's the name that I'm all for. But
Yeah,
I would also go Arlington's. I like the sound of it. The Washington Warriors just doesn't sound
it's too much like the Wizards. I think
not. It just doesn't sound like a professional team. You know what I mean?
it sounds like. Well, I mean, think about it. Also, we live in Orange County, and we're thinking about Minnesink probably. Which that was, I heard people have been talking about that. Maybe they're changing the name, but again, that's a whole other thing for another day.
That's
Um,
that's super hyper local.
yeah, it's super hyper specific. For the people who know, you know. If you don't know, then don't
Right.
worry about it.
Well, if you
But
don't know, educate yourself and Google it. There's some not so good history in Minnesink over the past couple of years, and I mean it goes back further and further in the time. That's not we're not proud of it, but that's some 845 history that has resurfaced along with all of this Black Lives Matter movement stuff and social justice stuff. And I mean, if Minnesink actually changes the name, good for them. And I mean,
yeah,
that's a
I,
town that has to deal with
it's the same
its own
thing.
problems.
Yeah, it's the same thing with the DC football with the football team in DC. You know, good on them for finally changing it. I know there's going to be people saying, "Well, it's 50 years too late," but it's there's also the phrase "better late than never," right? Um, but maybe like I'm ignorant for like maybe I don't understand everything, but that's the way I'm perceiving it. And speaking of like name changes and stuff, I think I mentioned to you. I don't know if I mentioned on air or off the air. If they wanted to keep the Native American theme, something they could do, is maybe like partner with like a local tribe and
I
like
don't
be at.
know if I think
I
because that's such a shaky history and because the
I
organization has such a rocky history with the
I
Native
mean
American community, I would stay. I would
I wouldn't
The
bet on it.
Grinch 8 foot, 10 foot pole is too
Yeah,
short for me. I would not even stay in the same area code
yeah.
as anything Native American.
And like I said, I would try to like if you were gonna go that route, I would find a way to like I want to would find it like wait let bygones be like the way to like ask for forgiveness and then find a way to like a mutual partnership and stuff. But
It's
that's
a cop
too
out. I think that would be a cop out, and you
yeah
wouldn't really solve the problem. Last question
I
before we
agree.
get out of here.
And hopefully they could turn a page, right? They could turn a new
Right.
chapter. They can we could they could finally have something. They could finally have something that the fans are proud of, that the organization is proud of, and that people won't feel like grimy. I guess
Right.
saying like I cheer for that I cheer for like the so and so's, and you feel just kind of like grimy just saying it.
All right, we'll get out of here. We'll come back with some Woj stuff. So we'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Feed Hudson Valley is a regional food rescue and harvesting network in the Hudson Valley operating through Dutchess, Orange, Ulster, Columbia, Greene, Putnam, and Sullivan counties. It links donors of prepared but unserved food and fresh produce with nonprofits and food assistant programs through an app assisted network of food donors, volunteers, and feeding agencies. Feed Hudson Valley facilitates the harvesting, processing, and distribution of locally grown or produced agricultural products, self-stable food donations, and prepared nutritious foods. The app used is called Chow Match, and it is easy for volunteers to download and use. Among the donors are restaurants, farms, food makers, stores, hospitals, and universities. The food assistant programs include food pantries, soup kitchens, and shelters. Volunteers are matched through the Chow Match app when a donation is available. They can indicate that they are available to make a run and then pick it up for a donor and deliver it to the agency. The Feed Hudson Valley Network currently includes over 300 volunteers, 130 donors, and 95 receiving agencies. Last year, on average, Feed Hudson Valley rescued and redirected over 12,000 pounds of food each month. Feed Hudson Valley could use more donors and volunteers. To learn more and sign up, visit feedhv.org. Again, that's feedhv.org. One more time, spelled out FEEDHV.org. Now back to the podcast. All right. In the first block, we were talking about the Washington football team changing their name to something different other than the Redskins. And now let's get on to an NBA Twitter topic, and a topic that has completely, I think, stole the weekend up until the name change for Washington, and that is Adrian Wojnarowski being suspended from ESPN for sending an email to, is it what state is it? Missouri?
I think it was Missouri, but let me just double check.
A Republican senator in I don't remember what state, but it was in regards to the China dealings in October of last year.
I think it was Missouri, yeah. Senator Josh Hawley, Republican from Missouri.
So it was Missouri, I was right. So the senator sent Woj a spirited email about his feelings about how Woj dealt with the stuff in China and that whole scenario. And Woj simply sent back, fuck you. And I mean, now it's being surfaced, and he was suspended by ESPN, and there was a public outcry for Woj to not be suspended. And look, I don't agree with the suspension because I'm a big advocate for free speech, and if it was a private email, it's a private email, and I get and don't get the dealings of a company saying, well, you still are one of us and your image reflects on the company, so we can't have that sort of stuff in the company. But also, it's a private email, and you shouldn't be, even if it came public, you shouldn't be snooping through my private life. And
yeah.
So I understand it from ESPN and from Disney's perspective, because if anybody else did that in their line of work, maybe it's not a fuck you email, but it's something that reflects poorly on the job that you have. Whether you're working at 7-Eleven, or you're a stockbroker, or you paint houses for a living. If you did something that reflected poorly on your employer, you either would be suspended or fired. And look, I'm a lifeguard. I've dealt with my fair share of stupid things that have happened while I was working. I've never been suspended, but I know people who have been because they did stupid shit. And this, yes, it's a private conversation between two people who have drastic different views on a subject, and I wouldn't like anybody calling me out and vehemently disagreeing with me, and I probably would have reacted to the situation the same way Woj did, but I'm still responsible for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And well, my perspective on it is exactly kind of like what you said. There's like two sides of this, right? Like obviously from the professional standpoint and stuff, if this was anybody else, they would have been fine. If this was anybody else at ESPN, if this was a lower person, this is just like a camera guy or a producer or something.
Oh, the camera guy would probably have been fired, and you wouldn't have heard about it.
Well, yeah, they would have been
those
fired.
Guys
They
are
would have.
not seen.
To shift gears now to the Woj perspective, because it's someone like Adrian Wojnarowski, they suspended him, which is like, I mean, if there was going to be repercussions, I'm glad it was. I don't agree with the suspension. Don't like, I don't want my words to be twisted. I'm all with the free woes. It's just like you want to put this into perspective. But I mean, like, I guess if there has to be repercussions, I'd rather it be that than to see someone of high profile, Adrian Wojnarowski, being fired. And we talk about bad optics. Like we bring
I
that
don't
from the
think
K
this
show.
is.
That would have no. I'm saying if ESPN had fired him, that would have been a way bad optic.
Well,
Because I remember seeing a tweet saying like, this is what I believe. ESPN needs Woj. Woj doesn't necessarily need.
no, Woj has his contacts, referred to by people in the NBA as the 31st franchise. He is huge in the NBA world.
Exactly.
And just a quick history of ESPN, they've suspended people for putting things on Twitter before. I know this was a private email, but they've suspended Bill Simmons before, Jamel Hill before. So they have a history of doing this. And yes, there is a public outcry every single time it happens, but just if it happened, just as if it did happen at your job, there would be people that wouldn't agree with it, but stuff like this happens on a daily basis to
No,
people.
and I get that. I know I get that. And like I said, I don't really agree with the suspension, but it's happened.
It's
It's
also
over.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Nothing's going on. He will be in Orlando if he chooses to be for the start of uh the bubble. He will be there.
Yeah.
This
And
doesn't hinder him
yeah,
from
it's not.
possibly being in Orlando
Yeah, and it's not like they suspended him for the rest of
the rest of the
like the
time.
rest of the season or whatever.
No, it's not
Um.
an indefinite suspension. It's 2 weeks, and
Yeah.
he can quarantine himself for those 2 weeks and then head down to Orlando, or go to Orlando and quarantine for 2 weeks and be all
Ready.
ready for the NBA season to restart up. This has no direct.
This is no
This is a
real.
slap on the wrist for Woj.
Exactly.
This is
That's
a suspension to show face. This is
exactly.
we some people in this company might agree with you and might agree with what you did, but we have to do this because we have a responsibility as a company to command stuff like
No, and
this
that's fair,
and
and that's
to show
totally.
people that this is not how we act at ESPN. And I agree with that. But if you really look at the nuts and bolts of this, it's a slap on the wrist. It's a parking ticket. But a quick tangent with Woj. When I was interning with the Brooklyn Nets, not to name drop here, but when I was interning with the Nets, during a Sixers Nets game, I saw Elton Brand and Woj talking in one of the tunnels across from the visiting locker room in Barclays Center. Woj is sneaky tall. He's like
Really?
6'5".
Whoa. Okay.
He's sneaky tall.
I never would have pictured.
No,
Well, that's
you,
that's the
you
thing.
don't
You
you don't
you
see this
only
cut, like you only see him from the neck up sometimes.
exactly. So you only see a guy from like the shoulders up. You really have no idea.
He's sneaky
Well,
tall.
well, that was like SVP. I never realized how tall he was.
Oh,
He's like
SVP is like 6'7". That man could probably dunk in his early years. But let's get out of here. We'll completely switch up the topic, and we'll be right back. All right. So really interesting, I would say, and serious kind of podcast so far. Let's switch gears entirely and talk about the team that is near and dear to our hearts more than any other team that we root for, the New York Yankees, and in particular, one of our favorite players. We have talked about him numerous times on air, and that's Clint Frazier. And the reason why I want to bring him up is twofold. One, he is one of the players that I think is taking a stance with their platform and saying, whenever I step into the batter's box or step on the field for this pandemic shortened season, I'm going to be wearing a mask. And I think that is powerful in taking that statement. And two, I think it's a serious conversation because I don't know how many days left Frazier has in a Yankee uniform. He has been playing in the inter squad games recently, but that's only been for the past 4 or 5 days. Up until that point, he was dealing with some plantar fasciitis and was only able to take a couple of hacks during BP. John, since Betances has jumped ship and went across town, I think you and Vinny are co-presidents of the Clint Frazier fan club. How are you feeling about Frazier's state with the Yanks?
Unsure, and I've been unsure for a while, to be quite honest. The past couple seasons, I've been waiting for them to like find the space for him, and it seems that they just don't for whatever reason. For like different issues keep coming up, and I think the guy's extremely talented. I think the guy, to quote the other guys, he's a peacock, and you just gotta let him fly. Um,
Didn't think you were gonna pull that reference out of your hat, but I agree with it.
you shot cheater.
They called me
You
the
should have
Yankee
shot.
Clipper. You should
You
have shot
shot.
A-Rod. Great movie.
But for whatever reason, it just seems that Clint Frazier full time in pinstripes just it's like it doesn't line up. It's like trying to stick like a square peg in a round hole. It seems.
Yeah,
It's like,
he seems like the odd man out.
or it's like you see, and this has been this way for like the since he's
His
gotten to the
yeah,
organization.
his entire tenure as a New York Yankee has been, all right, we got this really talented guy. We don't really have any place to put him.
Exactly, and it's like that's the thing that bond like from the that's I guess I don't know about Vinny, but like that's one of the reasons why I've gravitated towards him is like, oh, this guy's different. He looks different. He acts different. He talks different. He's not typically what you would stick.
He's not
Like
a typical Yankee. If he was
he's
around in the 70s, he would have been shipped already.
yeah, but I mean, Reggie Jackson wasn't a typical Yankee either when he
And
first
this
came.
this will strike a I just thought of this comparison, and I'm not fully standing behind this comparison as terms of level of play, but he is our generation's Ricky Henderson. A guy that is a provoker, is different from everybody else on the team, is outspoken, will go by his own beat of his own drum.
I I I could see that. I could
I'm
definitely
not
see that.
I'm not saying by any means that Clint Frazier is Ricky Henderson, but they are the same type of
But
person.
but personality wise, they're very similar.
Same thing with
And
Dion when
and
he was
and
on the Yanks.
and you don't know, like, will not like. I feel like it's like one of those things. I think it's getting to a point that it just seems like for some reason they just can't line up because either he gets hurt or there's someone there who's, I guess, slightly better than him or that the Yankees perceive as being better or whatever.
Well, they have a
Just
log jam in the outfield. They had no reason to get Stanton when they had Gardner and Hicks
yeah,
and Judge, and they have this guy who, by all means, could probably be the successor to Gardner in a couple of years, but
but by
they
then
want
I think it'll be too late.
they want to give the position to Talkman or um, they have Miggy now playing left field.
Yeah.
So it really
So
does seem like his days are numbered.
and I agree because and it's I think it's for me at least it's gotten to one of those points. He's not he's still young, but
Yeah,
he's getting to the point where you're like we'll be squandering like he's 25, right? So he's on the cusp of hitting that next level. And I feel like him not getting a full season in, him not being able to play like a full season and stuff is going to hinder that. And we're basically squandering his talent. So it's like it's down to it's like that thing. If you really love something or someone, you gotta let them go. You gotta let them be free. I think that's the point where we might get with Clint Frazier. Listen, if we could keep him in pinstripes and not, and he could become the guy, or like become a guy that we're gonna use for a long time, and that he's a successor to Gardner and all that stuff. I'm all for it. But if I'm not for like it's like him and surprisingly someone else that I'm thinking of like that he's grown on me in the past like few years is Tyler Wade. These two guys have
yeah,
such
that's
such
another guy.
such such good talents, and we're not using them because we already have a jacked loaded team.
Well,
And
I
these are guys.
think really quick, let's talk. We can go over. It's fine. Um, I want to talk about Wade in particular because I think he is a guy that if DJ gets too expensive after this year, that will
We
lean on Wade to go. Okay, well, we'll stick you in and you'll play second base. You'll be our everyday second baseman because a lot of people like him, and
I was just
I mean in
even
the
he.
organization.
Yeah, and even he's been growing on me. I remember like the first couple of years, it's like you try to play like his show and stuff. I'm like, who's this Tyler Wade guy? And then it's like you watch him playing. Okay, all right, okay. And then now it's like, oh, I like Tyler Wade. I like watching him play. Like he's fast. He's versatile. He's a left-handed bat, right? We need more of those. So I mean, I don't know if I would say like put
I
him over
think
DJ LeMahieu,
no, but
but
if DJ gets way too expensive and
oh man, I hope not.
the Yanks don't want to dish out 90 million if DJ hits 380 in this shortened season with 15 bombs and is one of the catalysts for the reason why we're contending for another championship. If he gets too expensive, they have an option there. I think the way that the outfield is stacked up, I would I think I've gotten to the point where I'm okay with trading Frazier. I know a couple of years ago when Garrett Cole was going to go to when he was on the market, that's who Pittsburgh wanted. They wanted Garrett or they wanted Frazier, and we wouldn't give him to Pittsburgh, and Cole went to Houston
Houston.
as a result of that. We got Cole, and we're getting the last laugh here. But if there's one of those guys again, whether it's to get a high-end bullpen arm
Or high end starting.
or let's just say screw it, we'll get Paddock or Yates or somebody high level. I would be okay with giving away Frazier at this point because of the way that the outfield is stacked up. Plus, we got
Yeah,
Dominguez coming up the pipeline. We
yeah,
still have
exactly,
Florial. Like,
Ex- exactly. Like I said, and I think uh, it's kind of like I don't mean to tie. I found somehow to tie in wrestling. It's like we're hoarding the talent, right? It's like WWE. They
right.
hoard the talent. We're hoarding talent, and they're not being used properly. So like, if they can jump ship to somewhere, like if they leave, like if Clint Frazier leaves, and he goes somewhere else, and he becomes like an all-star, I'm not
I'd be
going to be
happy
mad.
for him. No,
Yeah,
I'd be extremely happy for him.
I'm not going to be mad. And the Yankees are not going to send him somewhere like ridiculous. Like they're not going to send him to Boston or to across town. They're not going to send him to the Mets. They're going to send him somewhere like far away, which is like we won't see him as often, or like we will play him maybe once or twice and stuff. And that like way it's. I think it's a good thing at this point. I think it's a good thing, unless
And I'll compare him to another Yankee, recent Yankee. If if he leaves, it'll be like Cano, and there will be a mutual thing with the fans where they understand why Cano left. They're not happy with it, but they understand because nobody in their right mind would have turned that money down.
yeah, that
And he'll
was
always have a place here in New York. I feel
exactly.
with fans. Now Frazier's more divisive because there's part of the fan base that just wants to ship him off tomorrow, and they don't care what they get for him. But
Yeah,
for a lot of hardcore fans, and you, me, and Vinny, to be three of them, we love the guy, and
yeah.
we're going to be happy for him no matter where he goes. But I think that's a good place to end. Really quickly, tell the people where they can find you, and we'll get out of here.
Oh, you can find me on Twitter at cousin John. As like underscore 56. Because I
I
keep always.
believe that's what it is.
Let me just double check right now.
Or no, I think it's
No,
cousin John 56, no underscore.
yeah, it's just cousin John 56. You find me on Twitter at cousin John 56. Oh, you can find me on Instagram. That's what it is. At not underscore Sebastian underscore Maniscalco. If you know, you know. If you don't know, then you don't know.
Now
But
you
give me
know.
but give me a follow. We like I'll see what people say, comment stuff. I'm losing followers, but I'm pretty sure Tim hasn't really gained any either. I think
Tim
Tim's
saying
still.
stagnant last I checked.
I think Tim's is still sitting pretty at 9. So, you know what? I think I can get a few more followers before he hits 1,000.
Does
So
Tim hit 100 before 2030?
I don't know, man. Maybe the next decade he'll hit 100.
You're doing really good stuff on the wrestling side of wrestling Twitter, so I think people know about you in that realm. But on this side of the coin, not the fake Jay Leo, on Twitter, jdatasports.blogspot.com. I have a Stanton article coming out in preparation for Wednesday's podcast. If you have any association with baseball Twitter, in particular Yankee baseball Twitter, you are going to be ecstatic for Wednesday's podcast. That is just a very minute tease for Thursday rather. We're recording it on Wednesday. It's coming out on Thursday.
Ooh,
So
I don't even know who's
John,
gonna be
I
there.
will tell you after we're done recording this, but if you've reached this end of the podcast, please like, subscribe, share with anybody who you seem fit. If you're on iTunes, please give us a review. And until Thursday, it's closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.